The guest you're going to be hearing from today is none other than Joe Roberts. Joe Roberts has spent 13 years in minor pro hockey in roles that have spanned from broadcasting, public relations, in-game entertainment, and most recently, sales. Throughout the course of his career in sports, he has worked for over 700 live sporting events in dozens of arenas across the country in junior, collegiate, and professional ranks. Joe is a graduate of Western Michigan University, where he graduated with a degree in film, video, and media communications. He's the father of 2 young children and loves all things in the sports business. I can't wait for you to hear my interview with Joe. Hello, everyone. It's Tony Will, and I'm super excited to have my next guest on the Women in podcast. But before I do, let me tell you a little bit what the podcast is about. So we are here to celebrate women in all walks of life and the people in their lives who are lifting them up. And you're going to hear from all kinds of super cool people, like my guest today, that are in my life, and they're going to share their stories to what inspire them, others, and the women that they lift up. This space is to be disruptive, forward-thinking, and change agents for humankind. It's uncensored, it's fun, and it's curiosity-driven. So the reason I launched this podcast is because I have a lot of important women in my life, including my 2 daughters. And so I want to help inspire those women and the men in their lives too. So some of these people come from the Kalamazoo Wings, Mindfulness Elevated, or Tony Will Coaching. And this guest today happens to come from my life in professional hockey. So please welcome Joe Roberts.
Yeah, I'm very glad to be here. I heard some of my favorite words out there, women and uncensored. So I'm very excited. I know how passionate you are about stuff like that. And I hope that I don't do a disservice. While I'm not a woman, there are so many important ones in my life, including you, wherever you're formatted on my screen, among so many others. So I'm really excited to talk about something like this and just glad to be here.
Yay. It's so awesome to have Joe on. So Joe, the first question, and I didn't talk about what you do for a living, but this will come out of this question. But how did we meet?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite intro stories I've ever had with anybody, for better or for worse. So back then it was for worse, for now it's for better. But at any rate, this was 2015, spring of 2015 or so, and you had just started with the K-Wings, and I had been here for a couple of years. I started with the organization in 2010 as an intern, and at that point in time, I was doing in-game hosting, so the in-game entertainment, media timeouts, intermission games, et cetera, making people smile when they came through our doors. And you were going around, you were making the rounds, and you were introducing yourself to people, and there I was. We were cornered in the concourse, and if I remember correctly, it was right out in front of your office area. It was right out there through those main entry doors. And you said, "Hi, I'm Tony. I took over here. I'm just recently started. This is my first game or second game or whatever it was." And I sort of joked because at the time I was doing a lot of low-level broadcasting work in Kalamazoo, including in-game hosting. And I looked at you, I said, "Hi, I'm Joe Roberts. This is what I do here." I said, "I like to tell people I'm Kalamazoo's most sought after B-list celebrity." Crack a joke. It's my style. It was great. It's perfect. I was like, "Oh, I nailed it." And your response was, and I don't even think I'm misquoting you. I believe you said, "Are you sure you're not a C or D-list celebrity?" And the funniest thing is how you and I talk about this story, because it frequently comes up. And it's an amazing case study of how 2 people can have one interaction and take 2 totally different things out of it. Because you walked away saying, "I like that guy." And I walked away saying, "Who is this chick?" I was like, "What is she doing?" I was like, "She just said that to me?" So, like I said, for then it was for worse. Now it's for better. Here we are. You and I have worked together for a long time, and even through job changes and relocations and that kind of stuff, we've always stayed in touch. And the cyclical journey has brought me back to working for you. And so here we are undergoing another season of K-Wings hockey together.
Yeah, and it's interesting because my listeners know that I live alcohol-free now, but Joe knew me back in the days when I wasn't alcohol-free, wasn't the AF, it was more alcohol-fueled. So I'm going a little off script here, which I know you're fine with. But you knew me back in my drinking days.
I did, yes, and it was and I assume that a lot of people have versions of their journey where it goes from oh, fun, she's fun, we're having a great time, to I think we're maybe seeing something that's a little bit deeper. So
Mhm.
I you are one of the way I describe you to people is that you've never half-assed anything a day in your life. So if it's going to be to run an Ironman, every part of your life is going to be dedicated to running the Ironman, swimming and biking. If you're going to do a marathon, everything is dedicated to that. If you're going to be an alcoholic, you're going to be the best alcoholic out there, right? Nobody's
You know
going
I
to.
don't use that label, Joe.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to use that phrase if that's the incorrect phrase, but right, like you never half-assed anything. And so it was one of those things where, yeah, I mean, I knew you then and I knew you now, and your self-awareness is so much clearer. Your direction seems so much clearer. You're ready to rock and roll at any given time, and it's really been great to watch, and it's something that you should rightfully celebrate as much as you do.
Yeah, yeah, I'm really proud of all the work in that space, and it led me to doing this podcast in terms not just an alcohol-free podcast because it's not. I mean, people that drink can be on here too. I think you drink actually,
I do,
so
I do.
it's okay. That's not what this podcast is about. But speaking of the podcast, what made you agree to be on a podcast called Women In?
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, sort of when you introed me, while I'm not a woman, I've had, I am a son to a mother, I am a husband to a wife, I am the father to a daughter,
Mhm.
I am the employee of a female GM. So there are women in my life in different positions and with different relationships, and I think what it's allowed me to do is, even recently, some examples I've shared with you about trying to understand the way that I see things comes from a totally different lens than in a lot of cases the women in my life see things. And it's
Mhm.
one of those things where I'm trying to do better about understanding, but I do have a hard time empathizing because we don't always have the shared experiences. We don't, sometimes men don't have conversations that carry these same preconceived notions that women have, right? And so to see someone like you that uses your gender as one of your strengths to be an industry disruptor, and it's not just because you're a woman, it's because you're a woman, but you're also bold and you're forward thinking and you're not afraid to fall flat on your face when you try new things. I mean, it's just something that I've been inspired by, and I've been inspired by so many women in my life.
Yeah, Joe and I had a really interesting conversation this week, and it was work related. But what we were saying was the women that were part of this conversation, we all agreed that it was more the situation, which I'm going to be a little vague on purpose, was it was pretty cut and dry for us women. We're like, oh, there was some dishonesty. Nope, moving on.
Right. And so, and I talked to my wife about it, and she's a perfect example of it. And the way she described it was, well, listen, most of us, the women in this situation, have spent a long time being gaslit and have spent a long time trying to battle this totally unsubstantiated claim and thought process that, there's certain things that they can't wrap their heads around or whatever, or just don't understand. And it's like, no, like that's bullshit. And so like I said, I'm trying to understand it better. It's easy to sympathize with, but it's hard to empathize with because I have not been put in those situations, and it's it's something that I try to get a better understanding of for you guys.
Yeah, I love the growth mindset around it because and your honesty and vulnerability. We're like, yeah, I don't necessarily understand or see it, but I'm open to learning and not criticizing it or not gaslighting um,
Yeah,
the women when we say we feel a certain way.
I was trying to find the right phrase for it. It's like, a lot of times when a phrase like white privilege has been brought to the forefront so much in the past decade, right? And there's so much more awareness of what something like that means. But I think that there's something that exists for men, especially men in the workplace, and especially men in positions of power and stuff like that, that privilege that they might not realize they have. It does exist. It's not made up, right? It's not this fake thing. It's real.
Yeah, it is. It's 100% real. And I love the transparency and being uncensored about it, because that's where it starts. Like, why have men on here to talk about that? And even if they feel differently, let's talk about that. But I know you don't, because you're very open-minded and definitely growth mindset. As I've watched you move through your career, because you were pretty young when we started working together.
Young is a nice way to say stupid. But that has been a part, there's so many things where I'm trying to understand that, like, it's okay for people to grow and learn and say that they were embarrassed of ways that they acted when they were younger, the language they used when they were in high school or college or whatever. And then to understand that, like, oh yeah, like, your language has meaning and there's consequences and there's that kind of stuff. So nobody's got a clean slate, but as long as we're all willing to learn and willing to develop and willing to really understand the ramifications of that type of stuff, I mean, it's important to make sure you're developing.
So you mentioned some of the women in your life. You talked about your mom, your wife, me, and I know there's more women, your daughter.
Yeah.
But when you talk about women in, and then name of this podcast, so your wife is a woman in, fill in the blank. Your mom is a woman in, fill in the blank. Nora, your daughter, is young child
Yeah.
in.
Girl in. Yeah. So I'll start with my mom. My mom is a woman in sainthood. She is the kindest person I've ever met in my entire life. She is so maternal, and she loves unconditionally, and with so much volume. And she is someone who she's a salesperson professionally. So she works in the holiday turkey and ham business, and that's been our family's business for a long time. So she went into the food industry and followed the sort of family lineage in that. And she's a salesperson. And I grew up hearing my grandpa say that she could sell ice to the Eskimos. That's what my grandfather described her as. And she's one of those types of people whose success and reputation has been built on her kindness and her compassion. She's not a type A salesperson, walking in and going to play 18 holes of golf and buy you 100 drinks. She's just going to walk in and sit down and talk to you like she has known you her entire life. And some people do that and it's so disingenuous, but with her, it just works, and that's her approach. And I mean this with all sincerity, that I have never heard a single person say anything other than something positive and glowing and an incredible memory from experiences with my mom. So she's fantastic. She's where I get a lot of my personality from. My emotional intelligence comes from my mom. My work ethic and some of that kind of stuff more comes from my dad. So my mom sort of has softened me around the edges and allowed me to understand how people work and how person to person communication works. So I'm so grateful for everything that she's done and continues to do for us. My
Let
wife,
me, hey Joe,
Jess.
let me ask you a question
Yeah.
about your mom. Do you
Yeah.
think, as a saleswoman in the food industry,
Yeah.
and I know Judy, she's fabulous.
Yeah.
Um, do you think that she ran into challenges being a woman in this industry for as long as she's been doing it?
God, yes. I mean, she works in the food industry. The food industries are based in warehouses. Warehouses traditionally are staffed with, rough and tumble dudes in the back throwing boxes, driving forklifts, doing all that kind of stuff. She there's without a doubt, and I don't know the exact details of it. And typically, my parents put us in a little bit of a bubble where it wasn't made. So I don't think these conversations happened when I was growing up the way that these conversations happen now. And I think it's just sort of a fact. So I would love to learn from it. I actually think that's curious. That's a curious thing for me to ask her, is to learn about some of those challenges that she faced. But she had to, right? I mean, she was going door to door beginning in the early to mid 70s, selling that kind of stuff. I mean, where do you think who do you think dominated the decision makers on things like that, right? So there had to have been challenges, but I guess I've never been challenged to ask her about what those might have looked like.
Well, now I'm going to challenge you to do that. And then maybe Judy will be on my podcast too.
Maybe.
Has she ever been on one?
You know what? I don't know. She'd have to have some on-site tech support, I imagine, just in case something goes wrong. But I think she would do great.
I think she would too. And I know a guy that can help her with the
That's
tech.
right. Yes, her agent sitting right here.
So tell us about your wife. What is your wife a woman in?
My wife is, her name is Jessica. She is a woman in the school system professionally. So she works in the human resources department for Kalamazoo Public Schools. She is an incredible mother. She is one of the hardest workers I've ever met in my entire life. And she is the most loyal person I've ever met in my entire life. Um, she is a fighter that if you have in your corner, my goodness, are you in a good place? She loves the people she loves so intensely, and is such an incredible mom, an incredible partner, so supportive. And she is, yeah, she's really developed. She's worked in a lot of different fields. She's done a lot of different things, from retail to hospital work to school system work. And everywhere she goes, she's one of those people that say, or people say about her, like, damn, she's really steps up. She's really great at what she does. And as a mom, and I'm so lucky that she is my kid's mom, and she is, with her, my experience is so much different, right? Because I saw we have two kids together, right? And I saw her natural strength as a woman, her biological strength as a woman, as being like a mother and delivering children, and the level of respect and admiration I have for her for being a working mom and someone who constantly fights that battle of, like, am I making the right decisions and am I doing the right things for my family? I admire her so much for her ability to handle that with such grace.
Yeah, Jessica's she's an amazing woman too.
She
You're
is.
surrounded by great women, and
Um,
there's great men in your life. They'll be
Definitely.
later. I'll talk to your dad and brothers later.
Yeah, for another podcast.
Totally different time. So what do you hope for Nora, your daughter, as she grows up and she's part of this next generation?
Yeah, I what I hope for my daughter is, I hope that she feels safe, and I hope that she feels comfortable, and I hope that she feels like she never has to ask for permission to do something or be something, or feel like she is at the mercy of others. She is very much a free spirit, and that is in part by design. We want our child to grow up that way, and we want our child to grow up and be someone that is unapologetically herself.
Mhm.
And if that rubs people the wrong way at some point in time, then so be it. She is well on her course to being a strong, decisive, independent woman who, here's how I joke about Nora. Nora one day is going to be the president. Now, depending on how Nora decides to take her next courses of action throughout the course of her life, she could either be the president of the United States or she could be the president of North Korea, because she's a firecracker and she likes to rule with an iron fist. So the sky is the limit for her, but I just want her to grow up in a world that is inclusive and understanding, and that that opinions about her are formed only from her body of work and
Mhm.
her character, and not about what she looks like or what her gender is.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's exactly, I mean, that's why I want to continue to do this work for our kids, right? Our collective girls, right? And I have a son too. You do as well. Not that we're cutting them out of this, but it's been a little harder depending on what part of life we look at for women, especially us firecrackers like Nora and I.
Yes, yes. Yeah. That's, I was saying, who's going to be unapologetically herself and decisive and strong willed and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, okay, I feel, yeah, I definitely know some people like that, right? Like, so there's a lot of similarities that I see. And there's, one of the cool things that you have is you have a really neat platform of being someone who is, without a doubt, a minority in your line of work. And so
Mhm.
I've seen how many people it's inspired in our business and in our community. And I saw what you did with the Girl Scouts earlier this year, and you spoke to the Girl Scouts and spoke to them about their efforts for entrepreneurship and stuff like that as Girl Scouts and leadership. And it was really neat to see that sort of wide-eyed impact that you're making on these girls. And yeah, just a joy to watch. It's really, really sweet.
That was fun. That was one of my favorite things this year when I think back to the hockey season. We've just wrapped it up in the last few weeks. You mentioned diversity, equity, inclusion, and I'm immensely passionate about that. Um, what are you passionate about? It doesn't have to be in the DEI space, but what are you passionate about these days?
Yeah, I'm passionate about experience creation. I'm passionate about having a product in a community that is accessible to most, right? I obviously can't say accessible to all because there are so many people that face so many hurdles financially, transportation, any type of instability at the home, right? So nothing is really accessible to everyone, but we are accessible to most. And so what we do is we provide incredible experiences, and sometimes they are tailored specifically to people of a community that otherwise don't have this type of representation. And so I'm passionate about community. I'm passionate about providing our community with an entertainment option and a product that is memorable and fun. And, the same way that I envied the look that the Girl Scouts gave you with their big wide eyes and that type of thing. That's the look that I strive to give people from an entertainment standpoint at a hockey game, right? You throw somebody a puck over the glass and their eyes turn into saucers and you just see the marvel of the scale. It's really amazing what we get to do. And I don't take it for granted, right? I mean, I love working in the sports industry. I tried like hell to get out of it, but I came crawling back because that's what I'm passionate about. And so kind of going back to my mom and one of the impacts that she had on me is I grew up privileged enough that my parents, especially my mom, allowed me to be a dream chaser,
Hmm.
right? And I understand that privilege because not everybody has that, right? A lot of people grow up and they have to do whatever they can to get out of high school and go to the workforce and do whatever they can to make whatever money they can immediately. And for me, the privilege that I grew up with was being able to chase dreams. And so that's what I did. And it turns out that, my dreams, the things that I'm passionate about, have always been pretty consistent. It's always been this sort of universe of sports and entertainment. It's been different silos of that larger property as far as job titles I've had and experiences that I've had, but that's always been the sort of overarching idea and concept that I've wanted to achieve was that sports entertainment universe. And I'm really fortunate to do it.
So one of the questions I get asked a lot about the K Wings, and I want to ask you the same question because I don't think I know the answer, quite honestly. What is your favorite moment that you've had in all the years you've worked in the Kalamazoo Wings franchise?
Yeah, so I would say, I just to provide some scope to this, I just wrapped up my 13th season of minor pro hockey, my 11th with the K Wings. I've worked hundreds of games in this building. I tell people, and I say it with absolute truth and fact, um, I've spent more time in this building than any other building, and I'm at Wings right now.
Me too.
Yeah, I've spent more time in this building than any other building in my life outside of my home, right? And so I've seen a lot. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. I have to say that there's a couple things that were most memorable for me. Um, Both of them were hockey games. One of them was in, and you might have to fact check me on the year, but in March when we did the We Are Kalamazoo game,
Mm,
which happened right after the mass shooting that took place in Kalamazoo, and I think that was March 6th, 2016, I think it
16,
was.
yeah.
And we had a couple weeks and we hosted a memorial here in the building, and we because they needed the size, right, the community needed the size to mourn something that was so catastrophic and so sad. And then a couple weeks later, we had a game and we raised tons of money for the families of the victims. And we we put we had the seats in the building that we left empty for the rest of the year in memory of the victims, and it was just so powerful. And the young girl Abby came to the game, and Tiana, some of the survivors that were there. So powerful, so emotional, so overwhelming, but such a perfect example of the rallying power that we have and that we had then and we had now. And back then in 2016, admittedly so, we had no idea what we were doing. Right? From a business standpoint, we had no idea what we were doing. It was the blind leading the blind. We did our best, but it was everybody was learning on the fly, and we were still able to come together and pull something off like that. And I think it was amazing. The other one was the first ever Rainbow Ice game. So that was my first year back. I was doing in-game hosting, and I saw the ice and I saw the jerseys, and I thought, wow, this is really cool. And then what I saw that blew me away the most, that has blown me away for all 3 years that we've done this game, is the people on the concourse. Because that is one of the games throughout the course of the year that you walk around, you engage, you interact, you talk to people, and you realize, like, holy crap, like, these are people I've never seen before, right? And that means something for us because we spend so much time here. We have a lot of season ticket holders. There's a lot of people that we see, a lot of repeat customers, right? But that is a night that's like, oh my God, like something like this, it matters. It matters to people. It makes people feel safe and comfortable coming to our venue where they can be with people who are like them and have had shared experiences. And it just that different person, just someone else in our building. And I will never forget how that has made me feel over the last 3 years that we've done that game. It's really special. It's really amazing. I've loved it. Loved it.
Yeah, that's my favorite one too. The first one we put on. So just like all my listeners, which is zero right now because we haven't launched this yet.
That's
But
right.
we'll
We
have,
talked about the women in my life, so there'll be at least 3. This is gonna be Nora's first podcast she ever listens to.
and maybe because this will go for years and years. Eventually, she'll be on my podcast.
That I love that. Love that idea.
I love it. So people know that I love to read. You know I love to read, but I want to know what you're reading right now.
So right now I am bouncing between 2 books depending on where I am geographically. So here's my background on reading. Historically, I've not been a much of a curious reader, which is ironic because I want to master my line of work. I want to have this really firm grasp of how everything works. I want to be someone who can be consulted for ideas and experiences and that kind of stuff. So I've tried to be better about it. Now, a lot of the times that I start reading a book is because you hand it to me and you say, "Hey, Joe, this is a good one. It's worth reading." And only once or twice have I been upset based on the book that I read. I'm not going to give titles out today, but right now I'm reading Crucial Conversations, which again was handed to me from you. And it's about exactly what the title says: having crucial conversations and decreasing the lag time between interactions and then actions, right? Making sure that you're doing that quickly so that someone doesn't act out instead of just being able to talk it out. And so there's, I'm also going through leadership training right now that's teaching very similar things to understand personality styles and traits and thought processes because while you and I work together really well and understand each other because of our similar dynamic, I could also see how that could turn into people butting heads. Mm-hmm. And then I can also see how that means that the type of conversation that I have with you can't be the same as the type of conversation I have with somebody else. So I'm reading that. And then I also am wrapping up some books that are a little more unique to the sports industry. Sports marketing and fan retention and stuff like that. So that is what I'm reading at this point in time, which let me tell you something. If you would have asked me this, Captivate, I read Captivate. I already got that one done. And the other one I'm working on is The Elusive Fan. Thank you very much. See, again, you can tell where I don't go to Borders to get my books. I go to your office, and that's usually where they come from. I will say that the best book that I have read in recent memory, it's a bestseller. Anybody can find it. Unreasonable Hospitality, which is amazing.
It was good.
And I don't want to sell it short by trying to describe it, but it's a restaurant owner that is their goal is to become the best restaurant in the world, and not subjectively. I mean, like literally to be voted as the best restaurant in the world, and how they reach those goals. So kind of the idea of like, hey, everybody can make really good, really cutting edge, really contemporary food, but there are other things that go into it that really elevate the experience, and that's where that unreasonable hospitality comes in. And so for me, it's an easy connection to make professionally because I'm in the hospitality business. I work for a hockey team that's owned by a hospitality company. I have repeat customers. I'm prospecting new customers. I'm trying to retain them, right? But what they do really well in that book is they connect unreasonable hospitality to other industries as well. Everybody has corners of hospitality in their business. For me, it's more of a direct connection, 1 or 2 degrees of separation. For some, it might be 4 or 5 degrees of separation to find the hospitality angle in your job, but it is there, and it is very beneficial for your people, for your clients, for your guests, whoever it may be.
Yeah, it was such a good book. I
Yeah.
love it.
But like I said, if you asked me this question a month or two ago and you would have said, "What are you reading right now?" I'd be like, my Twitter page when I scroll through it, and that would be my answer. So I'm glad that I'm keeping my brain a little more active these days.
Yeah, and you're a fast reader too. I'm always impressed.
Yeah.
So one of the, we got a couple more questions,
Yeah.
but one of the reasons this idea of launching this podcast came into my head is I was sitting on a panel for Western Michigan University, which is both of our alma maters. It was an empowerment conference, and I was asked who are my mentors as I've been working the last 25 years. And I started to name off 3 different men. And I realized I never had any female mentors. And so this is part of, I'm starting a mentor mentee program in the league that the Kalamazoo Wings is in, as you're very well aware of. So I'm doing my part to like I mentor several women in and out of sports, and my own daughters included. But I want to know who your mentors have been in your career as 13 years in pro sports, and who knows what's happening after. But I know the sky's the limit for you because you could sell
Yes.
eggs to an Eskimo too.
Yeah. So I am going to be a minor league sports lifer. That's just my business. There's something about it that's so different than higher level. You know, for those who have, and I promise I'll answer your question, but for those who haven't experienced minor league sports, there is an intimacy that is attached to it that does not exist and cannot exist in the major league level. At the major league level, all these departments are so insulated, and the most insulated in all of it are who? The athletes. And they're supposed to be our biggest ambassadors, and they're supposed to be our best versions of our brand. And they put them in these silos and say you can look but you can't touch. The accessibility and the intimacy that we're able to provide because of our venue size, because of our players in the community, because of all these different things, is incredible. But to answer your question, as far as mentors go, I've been really lucky to have some really great ones. Personally, a mentor personally would be my mom, who I mentioned before. She and my dad, really. So a combination of my parents. So personal mentorship would be from them. They let me learn a lot of things about myself on my own. They let me be an experiential learner throughout high school, college, all that kind of stuff. They let me cut my teeth, for lack of a better phrase, right? So there were times where they had to bail me out of really sticky situations because they were letting me do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so learning through experiences often involves me and my brother doing something reckless or stupid or, illegal at the time, whatever. But what it always fell back to, and there was a very clear moment that that they proved that it was abundantly true. My parents always said, "We will be there for you no matter what. No matter what situation you are in, we should always, always be the people that you call. Always." And
Mm-hmm.
there's one situation that I will never forget. Without going into too much detail, it we cashed in on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We called our parents and they got us. They no questions asked. They got us out of a bind. And did we talk about some of the things that were happening when we got home in a more private scenario? Yes. But their first step was to protect their children and get them out of a situation that could have been bad for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so it reinforced what they had always been telling me. And so this promise was great to have, but the follow through was what was really, really important to
Mm-hmm.
me. And so they've constantly proven that time and time and time again. And so for that, I'm so grateful. And then professionally, I'm the opposite of you. A lot of my mentors have been women, including you, right? So you and I have learned a ton from each other, with each other. I started working for you in 2015 full time, and you were someone who I respected because um, you were a hard worker. You knew who you were and what you were about and what you wanted, and I really appreciated that. I keep using the word decisiveness, but I really appreciated that. And your willingness to challenge me and put me in uncomfortable situations to get better at what I was doing at the time. And then that sort of cyclical journey that we talked about. You and I always stayed in touch. We
Always.
always had contacts. We would check in periodically,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And so, relationship maintenance was something that I've learned from you as well. Like making sure that you're maintaining those relationships. When I left you the first time, I left on the best terms that I thought I
Mm-hmm.
could have left you under, right? It wasn't contentious. It was you saying, hey, like, yeah, this is part of your goals. This is where you saw yourself going. Like, I'd be crazy if I didn't think you should go. And so, but we were able to remain connected and we were able
Mm-hmm.
to maintain the relationship that when it came for me crawling back and begging for a job again, I felt comfortable doing it because there's a lot of people that aren't fortunate enough to have gotten to that point with someone they used to work for or ex-employer or however you want to describe it. So yeah, I've been really fortunate. I think from a like I said from a personal mentor standpoint, my family, my parents, and then from a professional standpoint, it's been you. Robin Hook was an incredible
Mm-hmm.
mentor for me at Western Michigan. He helped me understand broadcasting a lot better, and understanding and setting an expectation about the sports business. When I sat down in his office the first time, I said, why are there no student broadcast opportunities? At the time, there wasn't the infrastructure for it. And he goes, I need somebody to broadcast women's basketball on the radio. And I said, hell yeah, I want to do that. So I spent 3 years doing radio play by play for the women's basketball team. And he goes, you're not going to get rich doing this at all. And I was like, yeah, I know. And he's like, I'll pay you $100 a game. And I was like, he said I wasn't going to get rich. I was like, he's paying me $100 a game. No, then
Cha-ching!
yeah. Well, then I found out that if you go on the road the day before and you go out and have a couple beers and dinner and that kind of stuff, and the next day you're probably working for free because you probably spent the whole $100 the day before. So, it helped me learn about money management as well. So, I've been really fortunate to have some incredible mentors. A lot of them local in Kalamazoo, and it's just been terrific.
Hey, I thought of another woman in your life that we need to mention.
Who's
I
that?
can't believe your sister hasn't come up.
Oh, my sister. Yeah, AJ. She works for a local company. She does marketing for a local company. She is a new mom, and so it's funny. Jessica and I, we had two kids before my oldest sister had her first kid, and so AJ, the roles have kind of flipped, right? So like growing up, you go to your big sister for lots of things.
Hmm.
And then at this point in our lives, my big sister is coming to her little brother about parenting tips and this kind of stuff. And it's been fun to see that dynamic kind of rotate at different stages of our lives. But my sister, we grew up in my house. My parents were insane. They had kids born in 88, 89, 90. So it was just boom, boom, boom. And it moved really, really fast, but we were so, so close. And then
Mhm.
in 2008, my sister decided after doing, she played a year of college softball, did a year of culinary school. And she's like, I think I'll try going to Kalamazoo. And she went out there, and her and I lived together for the first like 6 years that I was in Kalamazoo, and she became like my best friend. I actually met my wife through my sister, who was her friend, and kind of a quintessential little brother move, right? Hook up with your sister's friend, I guess. Whatever. That's my wife though, so I'm allowed to say it. So that, yeah, she's been with us every step of the way, and she's amazing. I love her so much.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we got to mention AJ because I'm like, I gotta bring up AJ.
Yeah.
So we're gonna wrap this up, but if people want to connect with you, because Joe downplayed this a little bit, he's done a lot of broadcasting in pro hockey, not just for the Kalamazoo Wings, but for the Utica Comet. So you kind of have moved up the celebrity scale from when we met.
Yes,
I
I'm
think you
hope.
actually are at B level now, for
Well,
real.
finally, which is great. And I don't know if it was appearing on your podcast that cemented that legacy, but I'm just glad that I finally got there. I've worked my tail off to get up to B list. It's a long climb to the top, but I've been moving up those rungs. I've really been trying.
So if people want to find you, where do they find you?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter, Roberts on the mic on Twitter. I am on LinkedIn. You could just search Joe Roberts with K Wings. And yeah, that's kind of where I live. And one of the things that I would love to do is to, if you end up having people who live in this universe, in the sports and entertainment universe, young professional parents, whatever it may be. I mean, if you see something that you think that you can connect to me about, I would love to talk. That's one of those things that I would like to increase some of my involvement in is sort of networking in that standpoint, and understanding some people who are maybe going through some similar things that I am.
Hmm.
Parent with two young kids, working in a demanding job, a wife that works. There's so many of us that are out there, and there's a lot of us that we share some of the war stories that are going on, at every step along the way. So if you see this and you think that there's anything that we might be able to connect about, I would be happy to have the convo.
Yeah. Joe's a great guy, and he's right. We always stay in touch. And to be fair, he did come crawling back to me, but there were many times I called him and said, "Hey, would you come back?" And we
Yeah.
kept turning each other down back and forth.
Yes, it was a series. It was a series of just bad time. It was like phone tag, but it was like life tag. It was like real life with real implications of like having a job, not having a job, whatever. It was the all's well that ends well.
Oh my gosh, it was 5 years we didn't work together, but we kept trying. It
Yeah,
was crazy.
I know, and you know what, it one of the things that helped in all of that was you being able to identify my strengths, and I think that's one of the things that you're really good at is you're really good at identifying people's strengths. And so, according to you, from day one, you always thought sales was my calling, and I was like, I'm not a salesperson. It's not for me. I'm dream chasing with the broadcasting and that kind of stuff. And then I started doing sales, and I was like, man, I guess I'm gonna have to tell her she was right. And so,
Now that's why I had on a new podcast.
exactly, right? Exactly. So that's me perpetuating the gaslighting and the whatever, right? So, like, I understand why you think the way you do. So, yeah, it's my favorite line was actually, you were right. So, I find myself saying that quite a bit. I think that's based more on stubbornness in my life than anything else. But yeah, it's been a great journey. And I hope that when you're doing this podcast and it has a million listens and views per episode, and I don't know if that's going to be for this episode or if it's going to be, 10
Probably.
years from now. I hope people watch this one and say, wow, Tony's gotten much better at podcasting since then. So
I hope so too when I'm syndicated.
that's right. Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, because we'll look back on these and say two things. Wow, we were young,
Yeah.
and wow, this they sucked.
Yeah. Yeah. I think our second episode together is really going to be when this thing takes off.
Oh, I agree. This was just a warm up.
Glad to be the guinea pig.
Oh, well, thanks, Joers. Thanks for being on the podcast, and I look forward to having you again. And of course, I'm going to have Judy on too.
Yes,
So,
I
yeah,
honestly think she would love it. But this was awesome. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you challenging me to think outside the box a little bit and sort of acknowledge, I don't always acknowledge people the way that I think I should. And so this helped sort of challenge me to do that. So it was fun and exciting to think outside the box. And yeah, it felt good. And I like that.
good. All right, now get back to work.
I'm on it.
Bye.